So YouTube team, keep it clean. What's going on? It's Ingraven here with another video and another episode of NFL Questions from Subscribers with another special guest. Having my boy Kevin O on was so nice, we had to do it twice. So, what Question from Subscribers is a series where you can ask me any NFL question you want to based off of any NFL team, and we answer it in a video just like this. And this is another episode. It's not just me answering, he's answering too. So you get to get that double insight, even though for me, I wouldn't really consider it insight. But anyway, team, keep it clean. Appreciate y'all. If you ever want to be part of this, you can send me an email to teamkeepitclean@gmail.com, or for the patrons. Patrons, y'all already know what time it is. Patrons, you can send it directly on special shout out to all the Team Keep It Clean patrons. If you want to become a Team Keep It Clean patron, you can go to patreon.com/engravenvids. And if you don't, you still get a big hug from me regardless. I love y'all. Team Keep It Clean, we got some fire questions as we always do. And not just fire G-Roll questions, but fire questions, meaning good questions. So let's get into it. Next question came from my guy Joshua A. He said, is the Ravens' overdependence on Lamar a detriment to their growth and what they do now that the trade deadline is up? If you noticed something during the Miami game, only number 8 was upset and passionate on the sideline about how the game was going. The rest of the team looked disinterested, as if waiting for Lamar to do something special again. It's really pathetic. What can the Ravens do at this stage to become better now that the trade deadline is over? The Ravens may be a good team, but it looks like they're not even trying to become a complete team. Wow, that is a powerful question right there. I think with the Miami game, like I can't say that. Well, for that game, yeah, I know Lamar was visibly upset, but that's him. That's how he plays the game of football. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He shows his emotions. Not everybody is like that. Not everybody does the same thing. Like even if you look at Joe Flacco with how he was, whether the Ravens were up big, Joe Flacco would just be sitting there. If the Ravens were down big, Joe Flacco would just be sitting there with his hand in his jersey, just chilling. So it just all depends on somebody's personality. Now in the Dolphins game, I've heard some people say, "Oh, well, maybe because of the heat they were fatigued." I can't buy that one. So most of these Ravens are from Florida anyway, so they know what it's like to deal with this Florida heat. But not that they even seemed disinterested on the sideline; they seemed disinterested on the field too. Nothing was going good. It was just all kinds of bad. But again, we can't just take that Dolphins game and be like, "All right, that's the Ravens right there. That's who the Ravens are." Because it was one very, very bad game, but it was one bad game. And they've obviously won a lot more than they've lost this year. And they've showed the passion. They showed themselves having fun on the sidelines and in the game and stuff. Obviously, when stuff is going right. But so I think with the Dolphins game, it was sort of an anomaly to the Ravens under Lamar Jackson. Again, like we said earlier, how they don't usually drop those games against those lesser teams like that. And it was just sort of an anomaly for this season because they just got dogged. They got just straight up beat. And the offense just had absolutely like no life to it at all. And the only drive where they actually did score, it was just aided by penalties the whole time. So we're all obviously ready to move on from that game. I'm sure Ravens, they've already moved on from that game because, fans, they hang on to games longer than the players do. But let's just see how they're passionate and let's just see how their just that fire is up against Chicago. So, Gav, how do you feel about just the Ravens, their attitude at this point of the season?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head there, Ingraven. Lamar Jackson's a very emotional player, a very competitive person, and he shows it. He's not afraid to show it, and that's what a lot of people like about him. It's one of the things I really like about him, to be honest. There was, I think, the viral clip that everybody's talking about and everybody has seen. Rashad Bateman, I think, was getting animated on the sideline, too, a little bit in that sequence where, he was kind of like shaking his hands a little bit, kind of agreeing with Lamar Jackson, whatever he was saying. But yeah, you're right. Guys respond differently. I do remember those Joe Flacco days where every time the camera pans to him, the hands are in the jersey and he's just sitting there with the straight zombie face, as people said. But, I do think that for a Ravens team that is passionate about their players, is passionate about winning football games, this is a game where I don't think anybody was happy, regardless of whether they were just sitting there on the sideline or showing it. They want to win these games. They're in the National Football League. They've built so much. They've worked so hard for these moments where, you can look at a game like this and the sideline, people looking disinterested on the field. I think this is really where the fast starts come into play too, because let's say the Ravens, instead of scoring 3 points on those first 2 drives combined, they score 10 or they score 14. I think it's a lot different of a ball game. I think the Ravens are in it a bit more instead of all of a sudden on offense. They're like, okay, we're not picking up the blitzes. We can't respond. What are we doing? It gets people worried on the field too. And it's really important to get off to those fast starts now, or at least early in the game, because that can set an entire tone. It can set the Ravens up for success, or it can set them up for failure. So I think when talking about their attitude and just how they carry themselves on the field, some people do it differently than others, I agree, but this is where fast starts come into play.
Next question came from my guy, Keith, and his question was in regards to the video that we've all seen circulating, or the clip that we've all seen circulating around the web, where it's Phillip Rivers and he's on the Manning cast and he's talking about the Ravens. He makes that little baby jab at Greg Roman and the Ravens for not adjusting. Anyway, said, dear team, keep it clean. Hope everything is good. I was watching this video and it makes me keep thinking that winning with Greg Roman may not be the best future for Lamar Jackson. Sure, winning is good, but making decisions on the field by Lamar may be on halt because of this offensive style. Just wanted to see your thoughts, because Roman won't be the coordinator forever. Just wanted to hear what your thoughts are of the QB's thoughts, and keep it clean. So, of course, we all heard the famous video with Phillip Rivers talking about it and the Ravens not having an answer for the cover 0. But again, my thoughts, same thoughts as before. I just I want to see how they respond. Now, we all, of course, wish they would have responded in the Dolphins game, but I want to see how they respond moving forward. Now, when you talk about Greg Roman, he said he's not going to be the offensive coordinator forever, and that's true. He won't be. But with Greg Roman and with the Ravens, when they brought in Lamar Jackson, I just felt like Greg Roman was a safe coordinator who could make Lamar Jackson's transition to the NFL a lot smoother. And he has done pretty good overall. Like the offense, they always ranked at the top. But it's been those clutch moments, obviously, in the playoffs where things just fall apart and fell apart in a major way. He, under Greg Roman, I know he was the run game coordinator in 2018, and he didn't become offensive coordinator until 2019. That's when they made that switch from Marty Mornhinweg to Greg Roman. So again, the offensive ranks have been good and whatnot, and but I just wonder sometimes, like, because Lamar's been doing this since college. He's been doing this since before Greg Roman. So I know a lot of people are like, oh well, Greg Roman. You see what's happened with Greg Roman since with him and Lamar, and it has been good overall. But it could be better, and I feel like there's just, for games like the Dolphins game and games, just the slow starts and the getting the plays to the line of scrimmage so late. And I just feel like it's something that's good, which has been good overall. I feel like it could be so much better. And I feel like I just feel like it's so much more that Lamar can do as a quarterback, as a player, so much more that I feel like this offense is just not reaching their potential. Despite injuries, because I know obviously a lot of people are hurt and have been hurt, and some more will get hurt, unfortunately, because that's football. But I just feel like the offense hasn't reached its full potential, and it can be very frustrating to watch. But hopefully this second half of the season, something can turn around. But with Greg Roman, he does have a history. He does have a history with the 49ers. He has a history with the Bills, and now he has a history with the Ravens too. But I'm just hoping that history can not repeat itself and things can just advance a whole lot than they have been. So, Kev, how you feel about Greg Roman just overall as the Ravens offensive coordinator? How you feel about Greg Roman and his role with and for Lamar Jackson? How you feel about Greg Roman?
Yeah, you mentioned that history, Ingrave, and I think it's important to talk about that because, he was in San Francisco with Colin Kaepernick. He was in Buffalo with Tyrod Taylor. Mm-hmm. And with those two players, each of them had a really good overall season, like really, really good overall season. And then the next year, their production kind of fell off a cliff a little bit and never really recovered. Now, Greg Roman's always been a run game mastermind. You know, he's had great rushing offenses over the course of his NFL career as a coordinator, and those offenses he's been able to build. But the past games have just not been there for him. And so when Lamar Jackson had his MVP season in 2019, people are asking the question, will it be the same as Colin Kaepernick and as a Tyrod Taylor? And in 2020, the regression for Lamar Jackson, you know, it was there in terms of stats. Now, for an MVP season, statistical regression, you know, it's to be expected. He can't improve every single year from a season he had like that. You know, by 2028, he's throwing 70 touchdowns a year. But I think that for Roman, I've liked for the most part, and this is the Miami game is not in this, don't get me wrong, but I think for the most part, he's been better at adjusting this year. We've seen him have bad quarters and have bad halves, but he's come out and he's adjusted better than I saw in 2020. I thought that was encouraging. Miami was a step in the wrong direction. And this is a what have you done for me now lately league, where you're fixated on what has happened lately. And it's understandable because, you know, the results of week 2 or week 4 at this point don't mean as much as what happened last week, because that's in the now and that's in the present. Well, I mean, it's in the past now, but that's what's going on recently. So for Roman, I think that he shouldn't be fired tomorrow or next week, but if he continues to struggle, it becomes, all right, what is it with this Ravens offense that needs to change if they're not getting off to the fast starts, if stuff doesn't improve in the areas it needs to improve at? Now, if Roman completely falls off a cliff this year and struggles, the only way I can see him sticking around is if the team says, look, we had a ton of injuries. We don't know if this offense is at full strength, and they keep him. If he does well, then they keep him and everything's good. But I think also a point that I want to point out is continuity with these offensive coordinators. I think the team really does value, because you go back to the Joe Flacco days and he had a new offensive coordinator, it seemed like every single season or every other year. You know, you can talk about Cam Cameron, Mark Trestman, Jim Caldwell, all these different coordinators, where for Lamar Jackson and Roman to be together, to be familiar with each other. And obviously, if it's not working, you know, it's not working. You got to let him go. But I think Roman has impressed me in some areas this year where he didn't in 2020. I've seen growth from him, but now it's a matter of continuing to grow, because if he just stops and all of a sudden it goes back to what it was in 2020, then you have to decide what to do. And at that point, maybe I'm looking at somebody new. But for now, if he can continue to improve, I think it's okay to keep him around. But of course, if there's somebody to put the blame on, you know, I don't see anybody else other than Roman who will take it if the Ravens start to struggle.
And the last question on this episode, a question from subscribers, came from my guy, Akeem. He said, hey, Ingraven, this recent loss to the Dolphins has really got me wondering whether the organization understands how important it is to get Lamar an offensive coordinator who will be an asset to him and the rest of the offense and not a liability. I have some facts regarding Roman's tenure here as offensive coordinator, and my question is simple. In light of these facts, how long does ownership choose personal friendship over positioning this team for legitimate Super Bowl runs? Thank you for taking the time to answer this question. Hopefully we can get back to winning in spite of our offensive coordinator. Oh, wow. All right. So fact number 1, he said, Roman, in spite of having successful offenses briefly in San Francisco and Buffalo, was never a qualified candidate in terms of having a passing scheme that is diversified and competitive. Number 2, play calling has much to do with timing and feel for the game, and Roman is consistent at calling plays that disrupt timing, momentum, and show no feel for the game. Number 3, the delay of game penalties as a result of him not knowing what to call is both egregious and unfair to our players. So we were just talking about that one. Number 4, if you watch the game closely, especially in the Dolphins game, Roman consistently calls plays where pass catchers consistently run routes behind the line of scrimmage, parallel to the line of scrimmage, and embarrassingly short of the line to gain. Must be talking about those screenplays. Number 5, opponents seeing this on film know they can simply stick their foot in the dirt and lay all players out short of the line to gain because of these Sesame Street route concepts. Number 6, predictably, he gets you beat in the NFL. Predictability gets you beat in the NFL when these guys get paid to study film. So why is it that Devin Duvernay's jet sweep, although successful, is dialed up almost every time early in the game at the most predictable times in the game? along with these wide receiver screens to Hollywood, it's obvious to me that Roman only has a handful of passing plays that he insists on calling so frequently that they are super predictable. And lastly, when we as a fan base clamor for more screens, I think we mean to the running backs as well, with blockers out in front, specifically thrown over the heads of an aggressive defensive line when they are working our offensive line. I know we don't necessarily have the most athletic group of offensive linemen, but I guess it's too much to ask for an offensive coordinator to actually dial up well thought out plays. Oof, man. I guess he's not a Roman fan. He said, can't wait to see what this offense could look like when we get someone with no affiliation to Harbaugh whatsoever. His guys are always a big yikes. Oof. So, with all that being said, one of the things with a Harbaugh that I always make fun of, but it is true, that he puts on for his guys. He loves his guys. He knows his guys, and he will go to bat for his guys. If you're one of his friends, if y'all ever coach together, if he got love for you, then he will get you a job. And sometimes we've seen where he can be loyal to a fault. Now with Greg Roman, like Kev just mentioned, with the offensive coordinators with the Ravens, when you can have some consistency at a position or at a coaching spot, that's a good thing, because we've seen it where teams that flip and flop and always firing this guy, that guy, and the third, it's usually not a good thing. It usually doesn't work out for them. But with the Ravens, they've been pretty consistent. Obviously, at the head coach position, John Harbaugh's been there, 12, 13 years? I forget how long he's been there, but it's been a long time. And with Greg Roman, with everything that you mentioned, it's a big yikes. It's all some stuff to think about. How you mentioned the getting late to the line of scrimmage. How you mentioned the one that was my favorite, well, not my favorite, but the one that stuck out to me the most from your list was about the timing and the momentum, and how there can be these plays that just disrupt that. And that's never anything that I really thought about before, but it is something that we've seen a lot. And like Kev mentioned earlier, with Greg Roman, no, he's not going to get fired right now. We know he's not. Now, I really do think, because when you're in the spotlight, that pressure's on. So if the world watched the Miami Dolphins game, the world got to see it, and it has brought up a lot of conversations that people had been having before about Giro, fire Giro's this, Giro's that, Giro's bad, da 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 da. So if he came out, I don't expect him to, and I don't want him to, but if the Ravens offense came out and they were flat like for the entire Chicago game, I do really think that there could be a chance that they could move on. I really do, because there's pressure on him. There's a lot of pressure on him right now. And again, because the world saw that. That's on full display. So not only is it on full display for Greg Roman, but it's on full display for Harbaugh. Now, when you talked about Harbaugh hiring his buddies, and Kev, I'm gonna let you get in shortly. Don't worry, I ain't gonna talk forever. I know I can. But when you talked about Harbaugh hiring his buddies, that is something that he's been doing. But I do not see the Ravens going away from that, simply because that's what the Ravens do. They are a family-oriented organization. So EDC and Harbaugh, Ozzie, Bisciotti, all of them are going to be on the same page for whoever they bring in. They're not just going to be, it's not going to be like, all right, Harbaugh wants to hire this guy. Oh, no, but EDC wants to get that guy. Ozzie wants to get that guy. Bisciotti's like, okay, you know what? No, bring me this guy. They're not going to be doing it like that. So that part, I don't think that's going to go away. And that's like, to me, I think it's a gift and a curse all at the same time. It's a gift because, hey, all of y'all in it together, which is great, and you want that. But it can be a curse because there may be somebody that could be more qualified than one of your friends and whatnot, or somebody that you coached with in the past, and you choose somebody who's maybe less qualified since you're closer to them rather than a person who may be more qualified. But Kev, have at it. I'll let you take it away now.
No, there was an interesting take that I saw on Twitter, and I can't remember who put it out, but there was a question posed, and it was, has Lamar Jackson outgrown Greg Roman? as an offensive coordinator. And that's a different word and a different kind of twist on this whole situation, because I think what Roman has done in Baltimore, he's had a ton of success. You know, obviously the MVP season with Lamar Jackson, he's anchored one of the best run games in NFL history, but he does have really apparent flaws, and nobody's perfect. You know, there's not going to be a perfect player, perfect coach, perfect coordinator, perfect whoever. But you know, it is a fair question to ask. You know, has Lamar Jackson achieved everything? Has this offense achieved everything it can under Greg Roman? And do they need somebody to come in and take it to the next level? That's what people have been clamoring for. And when they see the flaws come a bit more consistently than I think we saw a little bit earlier in the year. For example, the timing was mentioned. In the Miami game, it was 2nd and 17. And what happens? The Ravens run it with Le'Veon Bell. They get, I think it was 1 yard. Maybe he didn't even gain anything. It's the plays like that that kind of have fans and everybody scratching their head, where it's like, you know, obviously in a 2nd and 17 situation, you can catch a defense off guard with a run, but they're already sending pressure. They already have guys at the line. So, you know, when you see that, don't you think the short passing game would work? But then the short passing game doesn't work and the screens don't work. And all of a sudden it's like, is this offense going to do anything? And all of a sudden they can't. So for Roman in particular, for what he's done for this organization, I think he's done a lot of good. But these next couple weeks, I agree with you, Ingraven, they're going to be very telling about how this organization feels about Roman, especially if the team struggles. If the offense gets back on track, then all of a sudden it becomes all right. You know what? He adjusted. The adjustments were made, and it was fine. Now, you know, then the in-game adjustment question comes up, and all of a sudden it's, you know, can you do it in the game? Right. But, you know, if they have the week, if it was really a short week where the Ravens, they just couldn't get it done there, then they play well against Chicago, then that's what it is. But at the end of the day, for a Ravens offense that has been so good, they're going to take that into account, and they're going to say, you know what? We have had injuries. There has been success. The passing offense has improved this season, and they're also they're hiring minds around him who I think can work with him. Keith Williams, T. Martin. You know, this isn't just the Roman show. I think that, you know, he is the guy who calls the plays. He is the guy who makes those shots. But at the same time, I think that the Ravens do have a really good coaching staff around Roman, but now the question is, do they need a new guy at the center of that offensive staff to make the necessary jump for Lamar Jackson in this offense? Because look, Lamar Jackson deserves to have a coordinator who can get the most out of his game. If that's not Greg Roman, then I think the Ravens would have to make a change, and they would want to make that change, assuming that's the answer that they get, which is, all right, he's not this guy. But, you know, in a what have you done for me now lately league, the Miami game is looming large, and understandably so. But for a guy like Roman, I think that he will at least get a couple more weeks. On the very short end of that, I do see maybe a scenario where the Ravens just come out super flat. Like you said, Ingraven, maybe his changes made. We saw it, and it sparked a Super Bowl run for the Ravens the last time they fired an offensive coordinator mid-season. So there's a lot of flack with Roman. You know, he gets a lot of it, and some of it is very, very deserved, you know, for the play calling and the ability to not have the play clock run down to 0 on every play and just, you know, everything like that. But you know, Roman has done a lot of good for this organization. You know, you take the good with the bad and all these coordinators, but now again, it goes back to the growth. You know, I like to talk about growth a lot because if it stays the way it is and it's stagnant and there's no growth, that means Lamar Jackson isn't growing. And that's where the real issue becomes, because Lamar Jackson has all the talent in the world to become a player who just, you know, when it's all said and done, you know, you can talk about him as one of the greats. So I think that for a player like Jackson, he deserves to have a coordinator who can get the most out of him. And we're going to see if it's Roman or not over these next couple of weeks, couple of months. And if Roman stays, maybe over the next year or so, but we'll see what the time frame is.
Shout out to Raven.